Welcome to the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. Perryn Keys here, hanging out with one young guy and one older fella. Koki, you're stuck here with the graybeards. I apologize. Koki Riley here, our LSU baseball beat writer, and Sheldon Mickles, our Hall of Fame LSU men's basketball beat writer. We are here to discuss, obviously, opening weekend for LSU baseball at Alec Box. 3 strong wins, with possibly a fourth coming on Monday as well. A pitcher's duel, a shutout here on Saturday, followed by what was definitely not a pitcher's duel on Sunday. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about what may or may not be, we'll get Sheldon's 2 cents on this, whether this is Matt McMahon's signature win in his second season at LSU. The Tigers come up big. They get over the hump. They upset number 11 South Carolina on the road in Columbia on Saturday in what for me was quite a stunner. So, gentlemen, we're here to talk about it all. How you guys doing today?
Very good.
Doing great. Yeah.
You're stuck with the old guys. I'm sorry, Koki.
It's my pleasure.
All right, maybe you'll learn something from us. And in all likelihood, we're going to learn something from you instead. A bit of business, of course, as we always start off the show. We are here on Monday and Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. But more importantly, we're live on all our social channels, specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. You can always catch us live there on Mondays and Thursdays. If you don't catch us live, you can catch us on that same YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. So please subscribe to that channel. Please subscribe to The Advocate. You know where to find all our writers' great work. That's at theadvocate.com. To subscribe, you sign up, whether that's print or digital, you sign up at theadvocate.com/subscribe. And of course, we got pretty much every sport going on underneath the sun. Spring football is gonna start up here in less than a month, and there's always something going on with the football program. But in the meantime, you've got basketball, women's and men's. We've got baseball. We've got gymnastics, which is on a tear, and of course softball too, and anything else. Track and field, indoor track, with a big weekend as well. So stay up to date with everything with our LSU newsletter. Please sign up for that at theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. And as always, we are brought to you every Monday and Thursday by Champion Wealth Strategies. Champion Wealth Strategies is a national financial services firm specializing in the capital markets, securities, insurance, 401ks, and college and retirement planning. Our broker-dealer is LPL, financial member FINRA, SIPC. As you know, investments are not FDIC insured, may lose value, and have no bank guarantee. To learn more, go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. So, gentlemen, we were talking before we went live, and Sheldon and I were discussing this, and I don't mind telling you that I did not think that LSU, frankly, had much of a chance going into Columbia on Saturday. But of course, they've had a couple of close calls, a couple of 1-possession, 2-possession games that they couldn't quite get over the hump with. But no Jalen Cook, and they've obviously been through the ringer in terms of difficult opponents here the last 3, 4, 5 games. But lo and behold, look, they erase a 16-point second-half deficit, get over the hump, a couple of free throws by Jordan Wright to finish it off. And Sheldon, I'll just ask you, you say you thought maybe one of these was coming here down the line, but tell me, what was your biggest takeaway from this game?
My biggest takeaway is that this team just doesn't quit. I mean, they down 16 to the number 11 team in the country. And I think South Carolina, they beat Tennessee at Tennessee, and they beat Kentucky. And so they're on kind of like a historic roll for them because they hadn't been there in a long time. They went to the Final Four back in 2016 or so. But since then, they've kind of been down on their luck. Picked to finish last in the league last year and this year, which riled up Coach Lamont Paris a little bit at media days in October. But, they're having a very fine season, and Matt McMahon talked about it the other day that, he was, so proud of how his team responded on the road against the number 11 team in the country. They went into a 5-game stretch here that's really tough, really, really tough. And I thought if they won 1 game out of the 5, they would be in good shape. Now they have a chance to win 2 if they could play that well against Kentucky on Wednesday night.
Which is going to be a tall order, but I'm sort of with you in the sense that the 3-game stretch that just got through. I was thinking personally, look, if they finish 1 and 2, you got to sort of call that a win in relation to. And I know this is difficult for everybody to. I shouldn't say that. It's difficult for even me to remember. It's like, listen, this is Matt McMahon's second year, and let's not forget in his first year, there was literally nobody. He had nobody in the program. There were no players in the program when he took over, and so this was a rebuild if ever there was a rebuild. And of course, it's not finished yet, and it's not guaranteed that it's going to get all the way right, so to speak, and all the way to the point where LSU is going to be a top contender of the SEC year in, year out. But by the same token, this was a pretty impressive win. They got close. They finished 2-16 last year in conference.
2-16, yeah.
2-16 in conference, and certainly not. What are they? They're 5-7 now in conference. But they, and some of these games, Alabama, specifically Tennessee, even Auburn. I mean, you're just outgunned. It's probably just way too much to ask. Certainly, I for whatever reason, it feels like a matchup thing with Alabama where they're just not. it's just too much for them right now. They just don't have the guns, so to speak. They don't have the bodies. But in some of these games, even in the game, Auburn would be a good example. They go to Auburn. That's a tough place to play. They had a 16 home game winning streak just until Saturday, and they've got a lot of firepower. And Auburn got up on them, jumped on them all over them early. And of course, they fought their way back. They did not give up and wind up losing by 45. So to your point, there's a lot of fight in this team. Seems like.
Yeah, and they're 5-7 right now, as you pointed out in the conference. 3 more wins than they got all last year. They still have 6 games to play, and out of those 7 losses, 2 of them were at Alabama, 1 was at Auburn, 1 was at Tennessee. So teams that are in the top 10 in the net rankings.
Right.
So you kind of go, okay, look. Even Matt McMahon admitted last week, we weren't ready. We're not ready to compete with those teams. And you hope he's getting there. You think he's getting there. Last year, like you said, he had nothing to play with. He got there late. He had to get the coaches together. He had to get and when he got into the transfer portal, a lot of the good players were gone. I mean, he brought KJ Williams here from Murray State, who was I thought a very good player, but a lot of the other ones were picked over in the transfer portal.
Right.
This year, he was able to build the team a little bit more in the way he wanted to build it. He had the transfer portal open, and he got some nice players. He was able to, get a couple of freshmen. One, Mike Williams, is helping from the start. Started from day one, first game. And, they're kind of settled into their 9-man rotation now. It's a very, very good team, but they are all still playing together. And, he said that, they weren't ready to – and I don't think it's a knock against him. They just weren't – some teams aren't ready to compete at that highest level in the SEC. And especially when you play in Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee, all on the road, and then Alabama here also.
Those are all established programs,
yes.
Coaches that have been there for a while and they've got themselves a stacked roster. We don't know probably enough yet about Matt McMahon in terms of whether he can bring in a blockbuster recruiting class, but certainly those coaches have brought in several blockbuster recruiting classes, and they're more established. As you noted, 3 of those losses, as we noted, 3 of the losses, 5-7 now in conference, were either 1 or 2 possession losses to A&M, Georgia, and Florida. Of course, they lost in the last minute in Gainesville going into that South Carolina game, which is maybe why you felt that maybe there was, LSU was ripe for an upset here, in the short future, and they pulled it off.
Well, for whatever reason, this team likes to get behind by double digits early in the second half. Boy, it happened at Tennessee, and they fought back, got it within 8, I believe.
Yeah, it
happened in Florida. They were down 20 with like 16 minutes to go in the game, came back and tied it there, had a chance at the end to win. And they did the same thing at South Carolina. Auburn, they were even down 16 or 18, cut it down a little bit, and then Auburn kind of ran them out at the end. But, against South Carolina, they were down 16 with 15:31 to go. Looked like they were dead in the water again, and they just keep scratching and clawing and fighting. And, they came back, and Tyrell Ward hit a big 3 to tie the game, just as he did at Florida the other night.
Right.
With 91 seconds ago, he hit it at Florida, and the other night with 1:24 to go. So they just keep on coming at you, and I don't know what happens to them, but if they could just kind of hang with people more, and not get behind by double digits, they wouldn't have to expend so much energy to get back in the game.
They shoot, 54% in the second half. Tyrell Ward, as you mentioned, Jordan Wright, and Jalen Reed, all in double figures. Jordan Wright, obviously, with the big 2 free throws at the end. I was going to ask you to sort of set up. You had your story, your follow story, up at theadvocate.com this morning, Monday morning. I was going to ask you to just sort of walk us through that last defensive play. LSU can't foul. I mean, they can foul, but they're going to have to foul 5 times to get South Carolina to the point where they can get them to the free throw line. So that's not really an option. They have one timeout left. They take it with 14 or 15.7 or something like that.
15.7.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so they got to get a stop one way or the other, preferably a stop that's pretty fast. Can you walk us through that last play where Hunter Dean and Jalen Reed come up big?
Yeah. When you have 2 fouls in the first 19 minutes and
Which is
45
incredible,
seconds
incidentally, yeah.
of the second half, it's almost unheard of. But the refs let them play on both sides. I think LSU finished with 10 fouls. I think South Carolina finished with 9. And it was both sides gave up fouls at the end of the game.
Right.
So the refs let them play, and so LSU calls this timeout. And as I pointed out this morning, Matt McMahon, he's been having trouble at Tennessee, at Auburn. He's had to use almost all of his timeouts in the first half or
Just to try to break the momentum.
To break momentum, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's got one in his pocket, and it just comes up at that right time when LSU had scored. Jordan Wright had scored on a layup. They called their final timeout. So he tells them, he said, we're not going to foul. We're going to try to tie the ball up because they had the possession arrow in their favor. All these things are going on in the huddle. We have the possession arrow, he tells them. We're going to try to tie it up. They deny it. First of all, you talk about Hunter Dean and Jalen Ward got credit for the play. But if you go back and look, South Carolina player was running on the baseline trying to find a guard to throw the ball to.
Right.
They couldn't because LSU was denying the ball.
Right.
So they did such a great job there. They threw it into a 6'8", 260-pound forward who's an incredible player. He's really good, B.J. Mack.
But he's not who you want
He's
to
not
have
who
the
you
ball.
want to have the ball in his hands. And he said later that he was trying to decide if he should call timeout, but he was too close to the sideline, which I found kind of strange. You call timeout no matter where you are.
It didn't make
Anyway, he gets tied up by Jalen Reed, comes in. Hunter Dean fronted him. Jalen Reed comes in and ties the ball up. So that gives LSU the ball with, I think at that point, 14.4 seconds left.
Right.
Jordan Wright drives in, gets fouled, gets 2 free throws, puts them ahead. Still 5 seconds to play. South Carolina, LSU still has only 2 fouls on their side.
That's right.
So if South Carolina, you're trying to stop them from getting any kind of momentum, run down the court, throw up a prayer, or you could get a great shot off with 5 seconds to go. And LSU kind of knocked the ball out of bounds, and there was a lot of stuff going on. It was a big chess match because South Carolina hadn't gotten LSU in the bonus, so it was kind of crazy. I've never seen anything like it. Last minute of that game, and just the way LSU drew it up, everything came out perfect for them. Now I know South Carolina, Jacoby Wright had a shot from the corner at the buzzer or with 1 second left. That hit the rim. It was a good look for him, but it just didn't go. And it was just time, I guess, for LSU to get over the hump. And that's what Matt McMahon had talked about last week after the Florida loss, that somehow he told his players after the game, he told me, he said, somehow we got to find a way to win these games.
Right. That
we're trying to win, on the road and games like that they have to win to become a more, I guess, reliable team in the crunch time.
So it's it's a huge win. It puts I don't want to say that this alters the course of everybody's perception, but it's the feather in the cap that Matt McMahon had been missing. Frank, I'm speaking only for myself, but they had not beaten a top. Excuse me, I take that back. The very first conference game that Matt McMahon had as an LSU coach, they ambushed Arkansas, beat them. Arkansas was a top 15 team now. Then, certainly not now. But that was their. This was LSU's first win over a top 15 team on the road, and they earned every bit of it. I thought that it was an impressive showing, coming off of several frustrating losses. They've got. They've got the game that's always going to draw the biggest crowd of the year at the PMAC when these guys come in. Kentucky at LSU, 8 p.m. Wednesday in the PMAC on ESPN. Tell us what you're thinking about all this. I mean, we've seen them go against a lot of these other top teams. Not a vintage Kentucky team under John Calipari, but they've got firepower. Number 3 in the nation in scoring, 88.2 points per game. Tell us what you think about all this.
Well, I think it's going to be a pretty tall task. I mean, after what Kentucky did to at Auburn the other day,
incredible.
I mean, there was no doubt that game. I didn't get to see the first half. There was no doubt that Kentucky was in charge in that game, and Auburn just could not get anything going, no matter what their crowd did. Kentucky was just much the better team, as they say a lot that day. They may go up to Rupp Arena and Auburn may win by 20. I don't know, 15 or 20. It could happen. But, just Auburn, just think, okay, they got
that
Kentucky,
home court advantage just by itself.
Yeah, you got Kentucky right where you want them. And I thought they'd win by 7, 8, against Kentucky. And it just shocked me the way they handled the crowd, the way they handled Auburn. And then the big thing about Kentucky is obviously they can score, as you just said. But a lot of people have been talking about their defense, and their
they've
defense
not been keen.
is not. Yeah,
they've not been keen on playing hard defense.
The numbers on their defense aren't terrible. Their 3-point defense, this is SEC games only. Because a lot of times I go by stats just only in SEC games.
Sure.
In SEC games, they're 4th in 3-point field goal defense. And in all field goal defense, they're 3rd. LSU is 7th in field goal defense. So, and then points allowed, I think they're 14th, 80.3. So that kind of skewed things and people. But, I mean, when you look at what they did against Auburn the other day, I mean, I think they held them to 59.
Yeah. That's pretty strong.
And Auburn's got some firepower. I know they lost Jalen Williams during the game, who's one of their top 3 stars. But, it was pretty impressive what Kentucky did. Not shocking when you know about this program. Not terribly shocking.
Yeah, not terribly shocking. So, this is going to be an uphill climb. There's just no doubt about it. LSU is going to be a home underdog, probably a significant home underdog. What would LSU have to do to pull off back-to-back stunners?
Well, it starts with Antonio Reeves, who's Kentucky's best player, and he's he was an All-SEC preseason pick for a reason. And I mean they have just so many players that, I mean it's top recruiting class again. I think they had 4 or 5 stars come in this year, so it's another one of those deals. Now I know they've been missing DJ Wagner, who's the son of Milt Wagner of Louisville fame back in the late 80s. He's been hurt, so I don't know what his status is. I didn't get to see, like I said, terribly a lot of that game Saturday night, so I don't know what his status is. But Antonio Reeves is a good starting place, and they got a guy named, I was telling Matt McMahon the other night, he didn't know at the time, but this guy, his name is Onyesu. He had a Rupp Arena record, which has been there almost 50 years. Rupp Arena record, 10 blocks. The other night, about a week ago. So
pretty strong.
Yeah, so he's going to be a tough guy in the middle to contend with. But LSU has the height that they could go in there with. They got Hunter Dean, Derek Fountain, Will Baker, 7 feet, but Derek Fountain, Hunter Dean, and Jalen Reed, all 6'10". So LSU could come at some waves, with waves at them. I'm sure they're going to have a big tussle in the middle, down in the paint, but. We're going to see how it comes out. But LSU's done a much better job shooting the ball this year, both especially on the 3-pointers, which is where Tyrell Ward comes in. But, after the Kentucky game, as you mentioned, I mean, this is they're looking at a big game Wednesday night. And then Saturday night, Mississippi State comes in here, which has a net ranking of like 38 right now. But the good thing is you have them here.
Right.
And then so in that last 5-game stretch, You have Mississippi State here. You have Georgia here.
Georgia 98 NET.
Yep. So you have Georgia here. Then you go to Vanderbilt.
230 NET.
Yep. And then Arkansas, out of Arkansas, which
136 NET.
Vanderbilt and
Yeah.
Arkansas, you still got to watch out.
They're on the road.
Yeah. And then you got Missouri here, which is winless and lead play at 0-12. So
Right.
they have a chance to win. And I predicted at the beginning of the year that they would win 8 games in the conference. And maybe, if luck fell their way, maybe get 9-9, go 9-9.
But if you go 8-10, I mean, listen, and I know LSU fans are frustrated. They got used to, they got a taste of success under Will Wade, and I understand that the atmosphere is not what it was in the PMAC in those days. But you have to, if they go from 2-16 in conference to all of a sudden 8-10 or 9-9 in conference, that is a significant upgrade. And now you wonder, what else he can do. He's got 2 4-star players committed and everything like that. So it looks like the beginning of a program that is in rebuild mode that's making progress. So that's good news. One other thing before we turn you loose, Sheldon, some LSU track alumni had a nice weekend too. Just wanted to ask you to touch on that just quickly.
At the U.S. Indoor Championships over the weekend, Aaliyah Hobbs ran it's tied for the 3rd fastest in the world this year, 60 meters and winning the final, 7.02 seconds. And her old teammate and training partner, Micaiah Briscoe from here in Baton Rouge. Aaliyah, of course, is from New Orleans. But, Micaiah Briscoe ran 7.06 to finish second. And both of those have won like the last 4 60-meter dashes at the U.S. Indoor Championships, and both are heading to the World Championships now. But the funny thing is that Micaiah Briscoe, she's not really known. She won the 100 meters at the NCAA one year, and then Aaliyah Hobbs won the next year as a senior when Micaiah was still there. So it's kind of like you're looking at Olympics. Obviously, 60 meters, not an Olympic event; it's 100. But those two, I know for sure that they're going to have to be right in there at the U.S. Olympic trials in July or in late June to get a chance to go to the Paris Olympics. So very good.
Sha'Carri could have company there in the 100 meters in Paris.
It's quite a showing for LSU track.
Yes.
I mean, and then you have Aaliyah Armstrong, who's going to be in the mix for the 100-meter hurdles.
Sure.
At the Olympic trial. So once again shows LSU's dominance or presence in track and field
on the international level.
Not only national level, NCAA level, but also the world stage.
The Olympics will be coming up this summer, and so that'll be a lot of fun to watch and pay attention to. This is the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at theadvocate.com. You know where to find all our writers' great work. That is at theadvocate.com. Please subscribe. Go to theadvocate.com/subscribe, whether that's print or digital. Stay up to date with everything, please, with all our with track as well, in addition to softball, baseball, men's and women's basketball, football, everything under the sun, gymnastics. Stay up to date with everything. You can get the LSU newsletter delivered straight to your inbox. To do that, you can sign up at theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are here every Monday and Thursday with the LSU Sports Insider on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. But more importantly, we're also live on all our social channels, specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. You can catch us live there Mondays and Thursdays. If you don't catch us there, you can catch us after the fact on that same YouTube channel, so please subscribe there as well. And as always, we are brought to you by Champion Wealth Strategies. To learn more, go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. So turning focus, obviously so many people in this town and in this state looking forward to LSU baseball. It's sort of their favorite, I would call it a niche sport, but it's certainly not a niche sport. The LSU baseball team opened strong. These are not two strong opponents that LSU's playing this weekend. They opened with 2 wins over VMI, another win, 2-0 win on Saturday over Central Arkansas. We're taping this we're coming live to you before LSU's game Monday afternoon against Central Arkansas. But 3 strong wins early on. And, let's just start there, Koki. What are your sort of first impressions from LSU's first 3 games?
Yeah, a lot of interesting takeaways when it comes to individual players, whether it's the Javen Coleman, I guess now being just purely a starter, whether that's in the weekend or as like more of a midweek role. Whether that's Gage Jump and sort of realizing that he has some steps to take before he can get up the starter level innings and pitch counts. Even though he looked great in the 1 inning he pitched over on Friday, and that and some of the ups and downs of the offense, the ups and downs of the pitching staff. But all in all, it's been 3 wins, and yesterday's game on Sunday. I got all my days mixed up now.
That's easy to do. Yeah, especially when they're playing 4 games in 4 days.
Yeah, especially when they're playing a Monday afternoon game. It still feels like the weekend
Little odd.
to me.
Yep.
Exactly. But yeah, when they put it all together yesterday with a 27-5 win over VMI, and I'd love to sort of get into the details right now.
So first things first, on opening night, Thatcher Hurd gets the opening day start. Not necessarily a surprise there. But he struggled a little bit. And the rest of the bullpen came in and more or less took care of business, did what they had to do to get a W. And you mentioned Gage Jump closing it out. That was on Friday, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then the following day, LSU's bats aren't hopping necessarily against Central Arkansas. But you have 5 pitchers combined on a shutout. That's not nothing. And as we discussed before the season started, this pitching staff is believed to be the deepest that Jay Johnson will have had in his 3 years here.
Yeah, exactly. And Luke Holman got the start. He looked excellent. They pitched just a garden variety of guys after that, as they have pretty much for the entire season. And with Thatcher the day before, I mean, some of the struggles that he had were kind of similar to what we saw last year, whether it was control and walking a few extra guys that you want to walk, or trying to get back, or falling behind in counts and trying to get back with throwing meatballs over the plate that get hit.
Yep.
One interesting note is that VMI was actually a really good offensive team. They were 5th in the country in batting average last year, 25th in on-base percentage, if I'm remembering that correctly. So that's why it was kind of surprising what happened yesterday, when they only scored 5 runs, only had 2 or 3 hits for most of the game, at least. But anyway, so you can kind of justify, some of VMI's offensive success a little bit on Friday because of that. But at the same time, when you're supposed to have one of the deepest pitching staffs in the nation and as much talent as LSU has, you expect them to have better results against a team like VMI, even though Jay Johnson didn't blame himself for some of the extra runs they gave up out of the bullpen, that they extended Nate Ackenhausen a little further.
Said specifically he left him in too long, right?
Yeah, exactly. He left him in too long in relief in that game. But then as you said, they bounced back the next day and had a very impressive performance against the Central Arkansas team that had better pitching, as you could tell. VMI starter, they were on Friday, guys coming from the left side, but he's only throwing 83 miles an hour max. I mean, that's really, really slow. And then, but the Central Arkansas, their day 2 pitchers were pretty solid. And the wind and the weather had a big part to play in sort of the low score of that game. But it was 2 very opposite performances, and I think Jay Johnson sort of liked the fact that they were in 2 completely different ways.
You discussed. I want to sort of take this out for a little bit of a walk. Let's talk about the starting rotation. It's not quite. And by the way, just as we said the other day, that the starting lineup on opening day is almost never the same as it is in the last game of the season, wherever the last game of the season happens to be. In much the same way, the starting rotation is often very, very different at the end of the season than it's going to be at the start. And a lot of times you see there's a lot of tinkering, a lot of experimenting with the midweek pitcher, or how long should we go with these starters before, we don't want to wear them out and burn up their arms early on in the season, everything like that. But I found it, and I'm sure as you did too, he found it interesting that he said Jay Johnson said he sees Javen Coleman as a starting pitcher. Does that mean necessarily, and I know he didn't say, well, hey, he's going to start on this night of the week or this day of the week or whatever, midweek, weekend, whatever it is. But does that mean that LSU is getting pretty close to having what it believes its starting rotation kind of set?
Yeah, I think in terms of the guys that they want to start, I think we know who the 4 guys they want to start
Right.
are, at least as it stands right now. And I think Gage Jump's one of those 4 guys. At least eventually they want to get him there. I think Jay said after the game on Friday they wanted to throw him for 2 innings, but they only could get 1 in. And part of the reason why they wanted to throw him on Friday was just to close out the win and to make sure they secured that, the 3-run lead. But the plan is to sort of slowly sort of build up his innings to the point where he could be the Sunday guy. Because Coleman's already there with his pitch count, and Hurd and Holman are obviously already there. So, and I think Coleman as a starter, I think that's probably going to stay because Coleman wants to start. He talked about after the game, he likes the extra time to warm up and to just get his body ready. And it was part of the reason why he sat out the entire fall. That's what he said. It was like, he was sort of figure out his own body and to sort of understand like what's the best routine for him to get ready and the extra time to warm up before the game and as a starter, that's sort of the that's what sort of maximizes him as a pitcher. And it does make sense after the Tommy John surgery, after the fact that he would struggle in relief a bit last season. The fact that when he in his return last year, he came back as his first appearance was as a starter.
Right.
So because they thought that was the best course of action for his arm. So I think Coleman, at least when Jump is back and ready, by the time SEC play maybe starts around, you see him as more of as their midweek starter, or at least as their long relief option on a Sunday, for example. Or maybe they start Coleman and then they have Jump come in relief and they both throw 4 innings apiece or something like that. So there's a ton of different courses of action here, but I think those 4 guys is a pretty good shot. Those are just the 4 guys who start most of the games this year.
Now are they just sort of being cautious or they're sort of slow because Gage Jump missed all of last season, Tommy John as well? Are they just sort of look, we're going to sort of step him up and walk him along to the point where let's get his pitch count up without having to try to start him out on February 19th or whatever, throwing 121 pitches or whatever it is.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he hasn't pitched in a year and a half, so it takes time to build up your pitch count, right? And I mean, right now my guess is that his pitch limit's probably around 30, 35 pitches, and you got to get up to 60, 65-ish to get into starter range again. And he's just not there at the moment. And there's even veteran guys who are still trying to work their way up, like Nate Ackenhausen, as we mentioned earlier, and they tried to push the limit a little bit with him. So you just have to be careful and cautious with these things, and there's no point of having every guy's pitch count up to 70, 80 pitches this early in the season when you have so much time left to play. And by the end of the year, you want to have as many guys and go as deep as possible, just because of what they had to do in Omaha and if they get there again. So there's no reason to rush here. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Right. Yes. That's sort of what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
Let's discuss Sunday. Obviously, that's a long afternoon out at the box. 27 runs, 27 hits in 7 innings. LSU for the weekend now, at least so far, 3 games in, a .413 batting average and 4 home runs in 3 games. Anything in particular that stood out to you? We go into this season discussing about how LSU's probably got the deepest pitching staff in its 3 years under Jay Johnson. And the lineup, frankly, it's not going to be, quite, at least at the start, not going to be as potent as it was because you lost so many big hitters. But by the same token, Jay Johnson, well known as being a very, very detailed, very precise hitting coach. And these guys didn't disappoint on Sunday. They took it to him. Anything that stood out specifically about any of those guys on Sunday and the performance LSU had?
Yeah, I mean, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but with VMI, I mean, it's not like they're trotting Bob Gibson out there every single weekend. So that was part of the reason as to why they had that onslaught yesterday. But at the same time, there's been, I think both of the freshmen have looked really good. And Stephen Milam has found his way into the starting lineup in 2 of these 3 days. I talked about him a little bit last week and how he could be a potential contributor for them, even though he doesn't project to be a starter immediately. He looks like he's going to play a lot more than even I expected. Jake Brown has looked really good. Mac Bingham has swung the bat pretty well. It took Tommy White a few extra at bats, but he's looked a little bit better recently. They just hit a lot of singles yesterday. They literally set the program record for singles in a single game, and they also tied the hits record with 27. So it was a historic day at the box, and I think I think they kind of got out of their plan and they were a little too impatient on Saturday. But on Sunday, they did a good job of taking what they could get and shooting a lot of singles. And I think that the singles barrage that they had is kind of a indicator that they don't have quite as much power as they did a year ago. They've hit some home runs, and Jared Jones is 2 already.
You almost can't help but have less power than you had last year.
Yes, exactly. When you don't have a Cruz, when you don't have even Trey Morgan, Cade Beloso was obviously a big factor with that power. Gavin Dugas had some power, but Steve Milam isn't going to hit 15 home runs this year. So it's not like they're desperate for power, right? There's some other teams and some good teams in the SEC that don't have any power. Vanderbilt and Kentucky are 2 kind of obvious picks there. But at the same time, they're not going to be necessarily leading the conference in home runs this year, I don't think.
You can still win a lot of games slamming them into the gap and hitting over and over and getting on base, and the propensity for...
And speaking of getting on base, I have to mention this. They got hit by 7 pitches on Friday's game.
Incredible.
5 in, I think it was the 6th inning. And I think it was 5 and 6 batters at one point. It was 4. Yeah. It was 4 in a row, 5 and 6 batters, and 4 of them were hit. It was 4 in a row on the first pitch too. It wasn't just 4.
That's tough to do.
It was incredible.
I gotta say, I've never seen that before.
I've never seen that before either. It was just it's been a pretty wild weekend, but it's baseball. So what else can you expect?
That's exactly right.
If I can jump in here, it seems like Jay Johnson is. I guess he teaches this, but they've gotten hit by pitch by a lot since he's been here.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter or X, as they call it, some player, and I don't remember where, Sacramento State or somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
He's been hit like 8 or 9 times in 3 games.
In 3 games.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
I did see that. I can't remember the guy's name.
They had a loop that showed every one of them getting hit by, I don't know what his deal is.
But Jay Johnson does, hey, get on by hook or by crook. And LSU, they didn't lead the nation last year in hit by pitch, but they were way up there.
Yeah, extra base hits and getting hit by pitches and walking.
Taking
getting
walks.
On base.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a week or 2 ago. It's about getting on base is so important for their philosophy because the more guys you get on base, it's the Moneyball theory, right?
Sure.
The more guys you get on base, the higher odds of scoring runs, and you're just creating yourself as many opportunities as humanly possible. That's the most important step. It's not the most important step isn't necessarily driving them in because when you get so many rolls of the dice, at some point you're going to get 10, right?
Right.
And that's kind of been their philosophy, and combine that with the extra base hits, it kind of creates opportunities to score runs in bunches as well, and that's just sort of the philosophy that they have, and they definitely have enough power to have to be like an extra base hitting machine this year.
Any other thoughts as they get prepared here very shortly to play Central Arkansas for a second time to close out this quote unquote long weekend, and then of course as they go into what's going to amount to another long weekend next week.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see who starts today, and Cade Anderson and Christian Little are 2 names who haven't thrown yet, who 2 guys who I think sort of jumped to the forefront with that. I thought Fidel Ulloa on Saturday pitched really, really well out of relief. 94, 95 mile per hour fastball, really good slider from the right side. And they need some of those right-handed options. I think Sam Dutton's looked really well, really good so far this season. I mean, he was a Sunday starter as a freshman 2 years ago on that pitching staff that really struggled.
Yep.
Struggled quite a bit last season, but they've liked the progress that he's made this year. Just another option for them on the right-handed side because this is a very strange team where they have more left-handed options.
Dominant.
Yes, they have more quality left-handed options than right-handed options. So, the more right-handed options you can get, the better it looks, the better outlook it is for this team. The one thing I think they've kind of consistently struggled with over the last 3 games is walks. They've walked too many guys. Even yesterday when they were kind of shutting down VMI, I think they had 12 walks in that game, which is just way too many. I think everyone except for Aiden Moffitt had at least 2 walks yesterday, and that's a good sign for Moffitt in particular because he's had his problems with control. So yeah, those are sort of my takeaways, especially with the pitching staff. And I already mentioned Milam, and he's kind of been the standout. I won't say surprise, but standout guy when it comes to the lineup.
We will be here for it all. Obviously, the season is underway. We'll be here from now all the way through June, wherever LSU baseball, wherever the team finishes their season. So please stick with us. We are here every Monday and Thursday. We're here every day at The Advocate, continually at theadvocate.com. Please stay with us. Please subscribe to The Advocate if you haven't already, whether that's print or digital. Go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. Stay up to date with everything with our newsletter, with our LSU newsletter. To do that, you can sign up at theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. As I said, we're here every Monday and Thursday on all our social channels, specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. We are there live. If you don't catch us live, you can catch us there after the fact. Anytime you like. So please subscribe there, obviously. And if you don't, if you choose to listen via traditional podcast, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. We are brought to you every Monday and Thursday, as always, by Champion Wealth Strategies. Please go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. We will be here for everything. Sheldon's going to take us all the way through March. We'll see where the LSU men's basketball team finishes up. We'll see if they can't sneak into the NIT maybe. And then we will see, obviously, where LSU baseball takes us. It's going to be an interesting season. So.
I do want to ask Sheldon, what are the odds that they make the NIT, do you think?
I think they're very good. I think 17 wins could get them in there. You look at if they go 16-15 in that, in the regular season, win a game in the SEC tournament, then lose a game, they'd be 17-16. So I think traditionally that should get you in especially the SEC, a league that's going to get probably 8 or 9 in at least. I think 8 for sure, probably 9. There's some people think 10 could get in.
Into the NCAA tournament.
In the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. We will see. We will see. LSU is going to make it interesting as we come down the stretch. So we appreciate you tuning in every Monday and Thursday for Koki Riley and for Sheldon Mickles and Robert Young behind the glass. My name is Perryn Keys. This has been the LSU Sports Insider.